Class 20 on the golden doves and silver dots. In the introduction, page Roman numeral 19. In the middle of the first paragraph on the page, um, another fundamental distinction introduced by Saussure will help explain how Derasha generates meaning. So we spoke about the idea of generating meaning. You have the static text in the Greek mind. In the Greek mind, among the Greek philosophers, the text, the written word, was an anathema. Only through oral communication can ideas actually be discovered. The written word is necessary, it's a necessary evil because people forget, so the written word allows you to remember. But it's not real wisdom. And once you discover what the word is trying to communicate, the word, so to speak, dissipates and is gone because now you have the concept and that's it. So the existence of the word is kind of utilitarian. It's a tool to convey that message that is being hidden sort of under the text. And once you peel away the text, you see the message, you discover it, and there it is. In Judaism, we said that the text generates meaning because there's an interaction between the mind of the reader, who is a hacham, and he can interact independently with the text and the text. So that was what we studied last time. Here we're saying Saussure distinguished between the linguistic concept of the sign, the signified, which is the counterpart of the sound image. Okay, wow, there's a lot to unwrap here. So you have the sign in general linguistics. You have the sign. The sign has, it's like, imagine a coin. So a coin has two sides. There's two sides to a coin. So the sign in Saussure has two sides. One side is the concept of the sign. That's what the mind is thinking about. That's one side of the coin, right? And that side of the coin, the concept, is actually a counterpart of the other side of the coin, which is the sound image. So you see the word dog, right? That's a signifier, that's one side of the coin. And when you see the word dog, right, in the mind you think of a dog, right? So this is the sign. The sign is two sides of the coin welded together, as it were, and each side of the coin is a counterpart of the other side. So Saussure says that there's a difference between the concept of the sign on the one hand, and the linguistic value resulting from the association or opposition of a term to other terms of the linguistic system. Well, that's a bit tough. Let me explain to you what he means here, the linguistic value. So every word has a value. What does that mean? So, for example, you have $5. $5 has a value, right? So $5, the value of $5 can be measured in two ways. It can be measured in opposition to things that are not currency, that are not money. For example, you say $5 can buy, I don't know, a large popcorn in the movie theater, right? So the $5, the value of $5 is the large popcorn in the movie theater. That's a dissimilar thing, right? So the $5 is different than the popcorn. The $5 can be reducible to, I don't know, a large cappuccino in Starbucks, let's say. So it'll be $5. So you see again, the value of the $5 is measurable in terms of something that the money is not, something else, right? So there's a certain opposition between the $5 and those dissimilar things which money is not, right? So that's how you can measure the value of the $5 in opposition to things that the dollar is not, but the dollar can buy, right? So that's one way of looking at it. or you can measure the value of the $5 in terms of other similar currencies. For example, you say $5, 5 US dollars equals, let's say, 17 Israeli shekels, right? So those two things are similar. They're currencies, right? They're not dissimilar. So the value of money of a dollar can be measured in terms of similar things, right? That's one way to measure it. Or in terms of dissimilar things, which is again things that the money can buy. So let's read the last part of that sentence again, and then I'm trying to unwrap it step by step because it's really very dense. So just bear with me, please. So again, and the linguistic value. So there's a difference between the concept of the sign, right, the signified, right, and the linguistic value resulting from the association or opposition of a term to other terms of the linguistic system. So there's an association to other terms, and there's an opposition to other terms in the linguistic system. So now that I brought you the example of currency, let me bring you an example, let's say, of words, okay? So let's say an association of words, okay? Or here, let's think of it this way. This is actually an example that Ferdinand de Saussure brings in his essays on general linguistics. So the example he brings is a French word. The French word for sheep, right? At least back then, and I don't speak a word of French, so please, I'm not trying to impress anybody, and I'm almost 99% mispronouncing the word. But the word in French is mouton, mouton, similar to the English word mutton, right? So in modern French, well, that's modern French of 100 years ago, right? The word for sheep was mouton, however that's pronounced. I'm going to pretend like I know what I'm saying. Mouton, right? All right. And in English you have the word sheep. So you say, oh, okay, so mouton has the same value as sheep, right? Because one is a translation of the other. No, actually, it doesn't have the same value. Okay? The reason it doesn't have the same value is because in French, the word mouton means sheep, but it also means the meat that is served on the plate is also referred to in French as mouton. So they use the same word. Whereas in English, you use the word sheep for the living animal or for the biological life form called a sheep, and then use a different word for the meat that you serve on the plate, like mutton, right? So you have mutton. So you see the value of words are not always reducible to each other, right? Right? There's not an instantaneous, the word sheep is translated in here, therefore I understand the value of the word sheep in French. No, right? So you're beginning to understand that there's a slight dissonance in the way different cultures and different minds approach the world, because words have different values and they're not necessarily reducible to one another. Let me give you, there's an opposition, therefore, between the word sheep in English and the word mouton. Again, I apologize to all French people listening because I don't mean to be disrespectful to the language. I just don't know how to pronounce it, but I am trying to make a point. So the word mouton in French and the word sheep, they are not reducible to one another. And there's a stark opposition between these words. But let's look at now something in English. And I'll show you how association of words affects value. So let's have the word fair, right? So the word fair, what is the value of the word fair, right? So I have another word, terror. That's another word in English. And I have another word, worry. And I have another word, horror. And I have another word, dread. And I have another word, despair and panic and agitation and aversion. And these are all synonyms, right? You understand that if I only had the word fair, the word fair would encompass anxiety, and it would encompass dismay, and it would encompass dread, and it would encompass horror. But because I have the word fair and all these other words, the value of each word is measured relative to the other word, right? So the word fair is not quite horror. Horror is like, oh my gosh, horrifying, right? And the word jitter is a slight anxiety, And the word panic is a sudden feeling, right? So you see how whereas if you just have the word in Hebrew, for example, you don't have all these different words in Hebrew. You have pahad, you have yir'ah, you have emma, you have retet. I mean, slightly different. But you see the breakdown in Hebrew is slightly different than the breakdown in English, right? So therefore, the value of each word these are associated words. Each associated word changes the nuance of the other associated word. Okay, so now let's look at let's read this sentence again, because this sentence was quite a doozy. Another fundamental distinction introduced by Saussure will help explain how derasha generates meaning. Remember, we want to understand the rabbinic concept of derasha. I mean, in order to understand the rabbinic concept of derasha, we need to understand general linguistics. Okay, so here's a concept. Saussure distinguished between the linguistic concept of the sign, the concept, right, which is the signified, right, or what Saussure refers to as signification, which is, and that's in the mind, which is the counterpart of the sound image. We already know that every signifier has a counterpart, which is the actual sound used to express that concept, right? So you have the signification on the one side and the linguistic value resulting from the association or opposition of a term. So signification of a word, the conceptual meaning of the word is not equal to the value of the word. The value of the word is determined by words to which that is opposed. For example, I said that there is the idea of sheep in English, and then mutton, as opposed to mouton, right? And then there are associated words, and in the associated words, those are words with similar meanings but slightly different nuances. This helps us understand the derashot of the Hachamim and the approach of the Hachamim to derasha. This distinction corresponds approximately to the distinction between sharah and ma'na. So you have sharah. Sharah is similar to the idea of the sign, where you have on one side you have the concept, and on the other side you have the word. So the sharah, the word bait, the sharah of the word bait, and then the pronunciation. You have the pronunciation, the word bait, that sound, and then you have the concept, right? So that's the sharah of the word, the lexical meaning. But then you have the idea of ma'ana, and the idea of ma'ana says that the value of words used in a sentence relative to other words in the sentence, the value of each word affects the other words in the sentence. And why did it use this word and not that word? So I'll give you the example that I keep repeating because I think it's a great way. It's just to keep consistent. And like this, I don't have to always give you a new derasha. Zachor et yom HaShabbat lekadesho, zochrehu al hayayin. So the word zachor, it's used in wine, in the idea of wine, right? So therefore, that nuance is already there because nazkira dodecha miyayin, right? Or zichro ki en levanon. So you see, so why use zachor et yom HaShabbat lekadesho? Because it implies the value of the word implies wine. You see that? So these are closely related concepts. One illustration of each case will suffice, and in him, my father will bring examples. The rabbis taught, a disciple of the sages, Talmid Hachamim, who is not hard as iron, is not a genuine disciple of the sages. As it is written, a land whose stones are iron. Eres asher avaneha barzel. That's in Perashat Ekev, right? Eres asher avaneha barzel. So let's look at the word Eres asher avaneha barzel. Let's look at those words. Here, the linguistic structure connected with abaneha, its stones, is suspended. Right. You have the word abaneha, that's a signifier. Remember we said the coin has two sides. So one side of the coin is the actual sound, abaneha, that's a sound, right? And to do the derasha, you suspend the other side of the coin, namely the concept, the signified, right? Therefore, abaneha can now function solely as a signifier and be associated with the homonym baneha, her sons. So abaneha, in it has the word baneha, and you can now associate the word through derasha, of course, with banim, right? Applying the same method. So any Tamil Chacham, kol Tamil Chacham, she'eno kashe kabarzel, right? Is not a real Tamil Chacham because Eretz Asher Baneha Barzel. So the Baneha are the Talmidei Chachamim, and the Talmidei Chachamim, Baneha Barzel, have to be like Barzel, have to be like iron. So Eretz Asher Abaneha Barzel implies, right, or contains within it the idea of Baneha Barzel. Here, applying the same method, the rabbis associated Baneha with Boneh, builder, in the sense of a scholar who builds the spiritual legacy of Israel with his contributions, right? So in Tana de Belial, and then we say Amar Rabbi Elazar Amar Rabbi Hanina, Tamid Hachamim Marbim Shalomam Shene'emar V'chol Banaich Shene'emar V'chol Banaich Limudei Adonai V'rav Shalom Banaich. Please, people, when you read it, it's not V'rav Shalom. It's V'rav Shalom Banaich. Please, every time I hear this in Knisa, I cringe. Al Tikre Banaich Ella Bonaich. Okay? So it says Banaich, but the word Banaich implies in its form, in its morphology, in the specific letters, it implies bonim. Banim implies bonim, right? And therefore, instead of banim, we say bonim, those who build. So applying the same method, the rabbis associated baneha with boneh, builder, in the sense of a scholar who builds the spiritual legacy of Israel with his contributions. Accordingly, the verse is interpreted: a land whose scholars, abaneha, baneha, boneha, are hard as iron. Now, do you see the connection? Because abanim are used to build buildings. You build with the Evan, right? So you see how the Evan is the focal point between the bonim, boneha on the one side, and banim on the other side? You see it again. Eres asher abaneha barzel. Peshat, abaneha, Evan, lexical meaning, sharach is stone. And then you have V'rav Shalom Banaich. V'chol Banaich Limudei Adonai. V'rav Shalom Banaich. Right. So you have Banaich, right? And Banaich implies Bonaich. Cholam Haser would be Bonaich, right? So you have these three words. The lexical meaning of each word is clear. The sharach of each word is clear. Abaneha means stones. V'rav Shalom Banaich means the sons, the children, right? The banim, the Talmidei Hachamim. And then you have boneh. And again, boneh means, or bonaich means, people who build, right? And you see how the morphology of the words, right? Evan, ben, right? So Evan implies ben implies boneh, right? And now you have this triangulated derasha, where on the one hand, the avanim are used to build. Stones are used to build. So when it says banaich, right? V'rav Shalom banaich, it's talking about the bonim. Because if Evan is used to build and it's talking about the banim, then when it says banaich, is really bonaich, because from the previous derasha we know the banim are associated with avanim, which is used to build. So here when it says banim, it's the bonim, right? So here you see how there's a flow of information and between the pesukim through the derasha, of course. It's not a natural flow. It's through the derasha. This is generating meaning, right? And we see how the value of the words are interdependent and affected by one another, right? So the value of the words affect each other. The existence of the word ben, boneh, even, these three words affect each other. And what is it what is the matrix that shapes this? It's the concept. The matrix is a concept of the reader. And the concept of the reader, which is that the Hachamim, the Talmidei Hachamim, they're building the nation. And to build the nation, you have to be strong as a stone. Because that's how you build. You build with stones. You build with solid ideas. So that's the matrix. That's the reader's mind. And he comes and he associates these words. And he creates the derasha, which generates a new meaning in the text.